like a crazy child. You leave me breathless, you don't pay me no mind. It's all you all the time. Ooh, you're selfish. My heart isn't safe with you at the wheel. You don't care if it breaks, you don't care how I feel. You better watch the next turn, we're gonna crash and burn.
We're at Cecil Sharp House in Camden, sometimes known as the home of English folk music, and we're talking to Eilen Jewell, who I'm going to describe very loosely as an American country singer, although of course your music does go a lot further than that. Eilen Jewell and her band are here tonight. It's the opening night of your UK tour, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and have you come from the States like in the last day or so? Have you just more or less just arrived?
No, we've been here since October, I think we left October 12th.
Right.
And, well, we not in UK, but we've been overseas for that long, so what's that now? 3 weeks almost? 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I totally lost track of time. But we were over in the Netherlands first, and then we did 5 shows in Spain.
Right.
So now we've come back up here. We've been driving this whole time.
And is there interest in sort of what I'll describe as roots country music in Spain and Holland?
Yeah. In Spain, it seems like what they really like there is more of our rock and roll leaning songs, because we definitely do quite a bit of rockabilly and rock and roll. Yeah. And so we kind of lean a little bit towards that direction there, but in the Netherlands they kind of tend to prefer our more folky things. Every town's also a little bit different, but yeah. We just try to go with the flow of each city that we go to.
That's quite interesting, because we're actually bringing a Dutch rockabilly band to the UK at the end of next year, and there seems to be quite a lot of interest in that. Mm-hmm. But you've come a long way, so where actually is home for you?
Well, at the moment I pay rent in Boston, but I've been living in Boston for 8 years, and it looks like with if I'm lucky and I get my way, that I'll get to move back home to Idaho, where I'm originally from, in a few months. So I'm very excited about that. I've been homesick for many years now.
Yeah. So excuse my ignorance of US geography. Where is Idaho in relation to Boston?
So Boston is on the East Coast in the Northeast, just above New York City, about 4 hours north of New York City. And then Idaho is on the completely opposite side. Not quite the West Coast, but slightly inland from there. So near California, Oregon, Wyoming, Montana, that corner.
Yeah. I was intrigued to see you actually lugging the gear in and out of the venue.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that's what we do. I mean, we do
Yeah.
that 2 or 3 nights a week, and it just amazing. Tell me about the logistics of actually getting the show on the road to come to the UK, because it can't be an easy thing to do.
It's not easy. There's a lot to it. There's so many logistics. I could talk to you for hours just about the logistics alone. But my husband Jason, who's also the drummer, and I handle most of the logistics, almost all of the logistics in the U.S. And we do have a booking agency that helps us with that end of things. But and then also in the UK we have a different booking agent, and she kind of acts. She doubles as a little bit of a tour manager too. She arranges the hotel rooms and everything. But we don't have roadies, so we all help. Lug all the stuff, and I think it's good for me though, because it keeps me from becoming a diva, and kind of puts me in my place, and it's also good exercise. It's the only exercise I get.
It's the real thing.
Yeah.
It's right down the roots in the great tradition, isn't it?
That's
I suppose.
Right.
So you got a new album. It's newish, Queen of the Minor Key, which is very, very good, I've got to say.
Thank you.
How did the title come about?
It started as a way for, it was a musician friend of mine. We were doing a show together, and he introduced me as, ladies and gentlemen, the Queen of the Minor Key. And I think it started out as his way of kind of poking fun at my tendency, or some might call it like a heavy-handedness, with the minor key, because most musicians, they might have a couple songs that are in minor keys, but it's kind of rare that someone would do most of their stuff in minor keys. So it was kind of his way, I think, of poking fun at me. And at first I was a little bit self-conscious about it. And I thought, well, maybe I do that too much, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, so maybe I should try to branch out a bit. And I think that thought lasted about 5 seconds, and I thought, no. So I just kind of took that name and ran with it, and decided that's what I'll be.
Yeah, some of your strongest songs are in minor keys. I mean, is it High Shelf Booze? I think on this album is a minor key thing. It's quite a European, actually, that song. And I noticed in the minor key you've got you've got the style of repeating a line of the song, High Shelf Booze, High Shelf Booze, that sort of thing. And it's quite funny. I write as well, and I play guitar. And I was writing something in minor key the other morning, and I came up with this melody, and I thought, oh, this sounds really good. This sounds really good. And after playing it for about 10 minutes, I realised it was actually one of your tunes. So I kind of...
that's really funny.
Yeah. So this is kind of an instrumental at the beginning, Radio City, and Kalim Moxo at the end. Did you write the instrumentals? Because I notice you're mainly an acoustic guitar player on stage.
Yeah, I wrote the instrumentals. I wrote Radio City, and as soon as I was just kind of playing around on the guitar, and I came up with a line that sounded to me like it would make a really wonderful surf song, and I something about it, like I just knew right away I didn't want to add words to it. I just wanted it to be an instrumental, and I wanted to hear what Jerry Miller, the guitarist who plays with me, what he would do with it, and I knew it would be great. So I showed it to him, and that's like our intro. It's like our theme song now.
Yeah, it's great, and it really captures that 50s and 60s instrumental style. I was thinking like people like Lonnie Mack and the Ventures.
Yeah, the Ventures.
And the guy who wrote The Stumble, who I've completely forgotten the name. Who was The Stumble by? Can anyone remember?
No.
It's in that style anyway. Well, you've got a great band, and all of my musician friends think Jerry's an absolutely wonderful player and a real breath of fresh air in guitar playing. But then again, I think all of your music is a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
But you've kept that band together for quite a while now. It seems it came together around 2005.
Yeah, we originally formed for the recording of our first record, Boundary County, and that was in 2005, and we released it in 2006. We went on our first tour in 2006. But we didn't sign with a label until our current label until 1 year later. And that's really when things kind of took off for us, was 2007. So we've been doing things, like we've been touring like crazy basically for 4 years now. And so it kind of depends on where you measure it from, the recording or the first tour or the first crazy year when we quit our day jobs and just went for it. And
where did they actually come from? Because I mean, you've got such a good blend, and it's obviously been strengthened by playing together for 6 years now. Where did you find Jerry, for instance?
Well, I met Jason, the drummer, husband, manager, first, and he was living in Boston at the time, and I was living like a couple hours west out in the country, and he'd been a big fan of Jerry. What are their names again? Jerry and Johnny. It's just too many J's. Even I get them mixed up.
Yeah.
But Jerry, the guitar player, and Johnny Shasha, the upright bass player, he'd been a big fan of theirs and their other bands. They were in quite a few really wonderful rockabilly, country, western swing bands in the Boston area. So when I moved to town, I said, I met him first, and I said, I'm really looking to put a band together. This is why I want to move to Boston to do this and get serious about it. And he said, well, I know the best musicians in town, so I'll see if they want to do this with us. And lucky for me, they did, and they still do. And they keep getting in the van, and they keep going to new places and places we never dreamed of going together.
It's a great blend. So how do the songs come together? I mean, you write them, and then what do? Take them to the band and they start to develop them?
Yeah, well, I usually how it goes is I'll write the words and music on my own. I still haven't figured out how to write with other people. It's still a very solitary process for me. And then I bring kind of the rough, kind of the outline of the song to them. I'll say like, I'm thinking of it having this mood, and here's the melody, here are the words, and then we kind of decide together how to shape the songs, how to, where to put the guitar solo and how to end it, and whether we should all start together or one at a time. That kind of thing we hash out together, and that's a really fun part of being in a band with these guys too, is that they're really good at that, and we work really well together. There hasn't ever been a fight about anything like that, any musical.
So I think there's a lot of intuition there, I imagine.
Yeah, and we're kind of just on the same page musically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I mean, there are so many influences that I can detect in the music, and the whole of the kind of 50s and 60s. There's the rockabilly thing. There's a bit of the kind of hot club de Paris jazz tinge just here and there. You must have listened to a hell of a lot of music to get to that.
Yeah, I never really stuck to one genre. Growing up, I would listen to a lot of early rock and roll, early country, pretty much anything with early in front of it. That's like my only limiting factor there, is that I really like, early jazz. I listen to a lot of Billie Holiday. I really like her early stuff, of course, and classic country music, and rockabilly I just discovered a little bit later, just because it wasn't quite as easy to get your hands on in Boise, Idaho in the 80s, but I'm still kind of learning a lot about rockabilly, and a lot of what I've learned about music has really come from my bandmates. They know so much about music, and I really like the blend. It keeps me interested. I think if I had to just limit myself to one genre of music, I don't know if I could do it and feel like I was being true to myself musically. And I know that some people would kind of prefer it. It's easier to market, music if it's a very specific style, and it's like, then you can call it this kind of music. And I kind of envy people who would just say, I play this kind, and because I really feel like it's sometimes a bit tricky to describe what we do, and therefore to market it and find the fans who like all our different kinds of music that we do.
Well, everybody's genre crazy. They want to tie everything to a specific genre. But you've probably created your own space now, which incorporates all of those.
Well, luckily, I think so. I mean, luckily there's something called Americana music, and I think it's such a it's such a broad phrase. It catches everything. All the different American roots styles.
Yeah. So
that's it works for me because it's so miscellaneous.
Yeah. But there's a thread through it all, I think. It all goes back to the kind of roots of everything. I think everything you kind of described, it's in there. It's right to the basics,
I hope so. I mean, that's how I see it. I see it as all kind of one type of music, but I think some people look at me a little bit questioningly when I play, when I go from like a blues song to a very country song, what are you doing? Why rock and roll now? But they'll learn.
Works on the albums,
Thank you.
Looking through the albums that you've done. I mean, Boundary County was the first one. Letters from Sinners and Strangers. Then there was the Secret Shakers Gospel album. Is there any kind of religious background to all this stuff?
For me personally, there's not a very strong religious background. I grew up in a household of kind of agnostic, somewhat Presbyterian. I think both my parents were raised Methodist, but were kind of influenced heavily by Eastern philosophy. So whatever you call that is sort of the environment I grew up in, but in that band, the Sacred Shakers, there are 8 of us, and we all come from very drastically different religious backgrounds. And the thing we all have in common is that we love gospel music, and so I don't know. I play gospel music. I don't necessarily believe literally in every line, that I sing about, but figuratively, I do, and it means a lot to me. Each song means a lot to me, but maybe not in a way that a Christian would say this is what it actually means.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's a genre in of itself, isn't it? With great riches that's obviously influenced all the other genres we're talking about as well.
Right, that's true.
So then there was Sea of Tears. You had the Johnny Cash song "Shaking All Over" on that. Right?
Oh, Johnny Kidd and the Pirates.
Sorry, Johnny Kidd and the Pirates.
Yeah.
I should be shot for that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I heard the original version, by Johnny Kidd. I'd never known that it was originally a rockabilly song, and as soon as I heard it, I thought, wow, I think it needs to go back to its roots. I think it'd be really cool if we kind of did a somewhat rockabilly version of it instead of the psychedelic kind of. I guess it's the Who or the Guess Who is the version that I grew up listening to.
The Who did a version of it, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, live at Leeds.
That's
I think
right.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up listening to that one, and I don't know, something just clicked when I heard the original version.
It's a great tune, isn't it? You can do so much with it.
Yeah, it's very fun.
You can do it loud. I liked your version because it's quite quiet and intimate. Slightly different to the other ones. I mean, the Who's was a real heavy rock thing, wasn't it? Very good as well. And then you did the Loretta Lynn tribute album.
That's right. Yeah.
Why Loretta Lynn? What was?
Well, we at that time were looking. Actually, maybe a year before we released that album, we were looking to get back into some of our favorite places in Boston that we had kind of physically, just in terms of the crowds that we started to attract, we'd outgrown them. But we missed playing there because our friends worked there and we loved the places, and kind of small, intimate Irish pubs is where we mostly got started. And since we missed playing there, we knew that we couldn't keep coming back as the Eilen Jewell Band. We needed to appear anonymously, and so we needed a side project. And we thought, well, what would make a good side project for us? And at the time we were listening to a lot of Loretta Lynn in the van, and I found that I was singing along to most of her stuff, just kind of picked up her songs through osmosis, and I just thought that would be really fun. And so we learned like 25 or 30 Loretta Lynn songs in the course of a couple days, practiced them like crazy, and then did our first gig as we appeared as Butcher Holler, which that was the name originally of our side project. It was just the four of us doing all Loretta Lynn songs, and then we got the chance to open for her as the Eilen Jewell Band a few months after we formed Butcher Holler, and that kind of sealed the deal for me in terms of my fandom of Loretta Lynn.
Yeah.
Because I got to meet her really briefly, and she was just so sweet and humble and gracious, and I just loved the way she came across, and on stage too, like just a very classy woman. And I just thought, I don't know. So I guess maybe it was a few months later, someone from our label heard us as Butcher Holler and said, "Why don't you record like that? Why don't you record as Butcher Holler?" And so we did, and it was kind of my way of saying thank you to her for just being so awesome and giving us that opportunity to open up for her.
Do you find it assisted in sort of taking the pressure off of having to come up with new songs as well, to have something else to step into for a while?
Yeah, and it was a learning experience too. It was I'd never done that many cover songs, or focused that in depth on anyone else's material before. So it was definitely a learning experience, and it was it was just for fun. It was between original albums. I'd like to release original albums every other year, because I don't want to burn out on writing, and I don't want people to burn out on my writing.
Yeah.
So it came at a good time for me, because we were looking to do a non-original release anyway, kind of a fun side project thing. Like the year or 2 years before that was the Sacred Shakers. So next year we got to figure out what we're going to do for a fun thing.
Well, there are a few cover tunes sprinkled around the albums, and one that everybody seems to like among my circle is the Dylan song "Walking Down the Road."
Oh yeah,
It's absolutely wonderful.
thanks.
I love that song. It really lifts my spirits when I listen to that one.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
it
good.
does.
I've never been able to figure that song out, if it's a happy song or sad or what it's about, or it's just always been one of my favorites of
It's very
Dylan's.
relaxed. When you sing it, it comes across as very kind of relaxed. Everything's going to be okay is the kind of message I get from it.
Dylan's version is much more, seems a little more kind of on edge or something.
Yeah.
So if it's faster and so I don't know. Maybe he didn't intend it that way, but that's how I sing it.
Yeah, well, a good song you can interpret in so many ways, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how many gems of songs he's got hidden away, really, that have not really been used yet, So the 2010, the new album, well, was new. It is new to me. According to the publicity, you went to a log cabin in the Idaho mountains with no electricity and no water, and wild elks grazing around the place. Is that?
That's true. Yeah, I wrote it in 2010. We just released it in June of this year, so it is still brand new. But yeah, I was doing the writing last summer, about a year ago now, and I just couldn't do any writing while I was on the road. I'm just too distracted, dealing with logistics and everything. And so I secluded myself away, and I chose the mountains of Idaho, actually, very close to where I'm from, because I knew that it would be very relaxing for me, but not too relaxing. It's like when you go on a retreat like this, or it's not really a retreat, it's like more like a mission. But you also want it to have a bit of a retreat aspect to it, because at least for me, like the rest of my life is so intense all the time, and just like lots of stress and lots of got to be at this place at a certain time, and got to perform, and then get back in the van and get to the next place. And so I wanted it to be a combination of relaxing and yet also some place where I could get something done. And so a place that had a lot of familiarity for me was really important, and that's why I chose Idaho. So it's like home, but it's I haven't actually lived there in a long time, so it was just beautiful. And I lived in a shack for about 10 days and just wrote. I wrote and wrote constantly. And
is it safe up there in the mountains? No bears or anything like that?
Oh, sure, there's bears, yeah. There's bears and moose, and yeah. It's not really safe, but it's not safe in the city either.
Yeah,
I feel
true.
more safe in a place like that.
Yeah.
I trust bears more than I do most humans.
Right. Well, Eilen, thank you very much for giving us a really great body of music, which we're all enjoying. It really has been a breath of fresh air. Thank you for the new album, and thank you for taking the time out to talk to us.
Thank you.
And I
for
wish
having
you a
me.
very successful tour, and look forward to you coming back year after year with new albums. Thank you very much.
Hopefully,
Indeed.
yeah.
Thank you.
Take care. Sure.
You picked up a broken bottle in case anyone gave us any trouble, and we walked all the way back to Cortez. You sang "Help Me Dear Doctor" at the top of your lungs. You've been soaking up drink like a sponge. Little boy down the street, we all heard you mournfully call again and again for Roberta. Roberta, Roberta, Roberta. The mountain towns burned red, consumed by a sunset. I'd be happy disappearing under colors like that. And I fell in love with trains haunted by the old